Have you ever, held a book that's bound in genuine Italian pigskin?
Oh, wow. No, that I have.
Right. I mean, it's pretty wild. Imagine holding this thing. The pages are made of this thick, acid-free paper, and it's bound together in Switzerland using these traditional techniques that actually allow the spine to lay perfectly flat on a table.
That sounds incredibly expensive to make.
It is, and the physical production alone was funded by hundreds of thousands of dollars from this rabid, super dedicated fan base.
Wow, that's some serious back.
Exactly. I mean, by every historical metric of publishing, the person who wrote that book is just a staggering success.
Right.
And yet, if you look a little closer, you discover that this exact same author is effectively blacklisted, totally blocked from speaking to some of the most established figures in traditional publishing.
Which is a fascinating juxtaposition, right?
It totally is. So today, our mission is to understand how that contradiction even exists.
We're going to get really into the weeds on this one.
We are. We are going to analyze a single, supposedly polite email rejection, and we're going to use that one tiny interaction as a magnifying glass to expose these massive, invisible fault lines that are literally tearing the creative world apart.
I love it.
Welcome to the deep dive.
So on one side, you have this tangible, undeniable commercial success over in a completely parallel ecosystem.
Right.
And then on the other side, you have the completely closed doors of the traditional literary establishment.
It's basically two different universes at this point.
It really is. And to explore this today, we have to look at a highly specific piece of source material.
Yeah, let's set the stage for that.
So we are examining a YouTube video uploaded by an author and journalist named Jon Del Arroz. And the video is titled, let me make sure I get this right, Tad Williams' Confirmed Cancel Culture Has Reached Fantasy Literature. And it's sad.
That is quite the title.
It definitely grabs your attention. And within this video, Del Arroz essentially breaks down this brief email exchange that he initiated with Tad Williams.
And for those of you who might not follow the specific, lineage of the fantasy genre, we should probably clarify who Tad was.
Oh, absolutely. He is a foundational pillar of modern fantasy literature.
Like an absolute titan. We are talking about the architect behind massive genre-defining trilogies.
Right, like Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Exactly. And the cyberpunk epic Other. He is huge in the science fiction and fan base, which, the industry usually just abbreviates as SFF.
Yeah, SSF. And then on the other side of this exchange, you have Jon Del Arroz, the creator of our source video.
Right.
He runs a media platform and a Substack called Fandom Pulse. And Del Arroz basically reached out to Tad Williams to request an interview for his audience.
Which, to be clear, is historically a very standard industry practice.
Completely standard. A platform that covers science fiction and fantasy obviously wants to interview one of the living architects of science fiction.
Makes total. But Williams, as we mentioned, declined the request via email.
He did. And we are not just looking at this to dissect some random interpersonal internet drama.
No, not at all.
The reason you, as a listener, should actually care about this specific exchange is that it represents this perfect microcosm of the entire current publishing landscape.
It really hits every single nerve.
It does. If we trace the arguments made in this video, we hit every major tension point in the modern creative industry today.
We're talking about the mechanics of ideological gatekeeping.
Right. And the shifting definition of professional boundaries.
Not to mention the absolute panic over artificial intelligence.
Oh, the AI stuff is huge. And of course, the existential threat of a completely post-literate demographic.
It is a lot to unpack. But before we go any further, I do need to draw a very hard, very clear line in the sand regarding our approach to this material today.
Yes, this is crucial.
We are examining the arguments and the analysis presented in this video strictly as neutral observers.
100% neutral.
The source material we are looking at contains explicitly political, cultural, and religious viewpoints. And we are taking absolutely no sides on any of them.
None. We are not endorsing a left-wing perspective or a right-wing perspective or anything in between.
Right. Our objective here is purely analytical. We are just mapping the architecture of Del Arroz's argument to understand what his perspective actually reveals about modern public.
Exactly. We are treating this video as an artifact.
An artifact, yes. That's a great way to put it.
We are just analyzing the structural forces it describes without passing any judgment on the personal or ideological positions held by either of these two guys.
So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and put the artifact on the table.
Let's do it.
To understand the fallout, we first need to look at the exact anatomy of the rejection itself.
Because the language here is fascinating.
It really is. The specific wording in this email is like a masterclass in the friction between personal boundary setting and structural gate.
And in an industry where your entire commodity is word, the specific words you choose to use in a professional denial carry immense weight.
Absolutely. So according to the text that Del Arroz reads in the video, Williams writes, and I'm quoting here, "Mr. Del Arroz, I'm going to respectfully turn down your request for an interview."
Which is a totally normal opening.
Very standard. But then he says, "You have every right to your opinions on the state of SFF, the community politics, and religion."
And then who comes the pivot?
Right. Williams concludes the thought by stating that, quote, "Some of the things you have said and done make it too difficult for me to do business."
Wow. Yeah, that phrase, "do business with you," that is the absolute operational fulcrum of that entire email.
It completely reframes the whole interaction.
It does.
I look at that phrase and I immediately see the application of corporate language to what, historically anyway, has been a communal or artistic dialogue.
Right, because Williams is explicitly framing a public interview, which is basically just two people talking about writing and world building as a business transaction.
He is literally stating that the act of granting an interview is the equivalent in business.
Yeah, but in the video, Del Arroz aggressively pushes back on that paradigm.
Oh, he rejects.
He argues that an interview is not a business merge, it's a journalistic exchange.
Right, it's just a conversation in the public square.
Exactly, which kind of forces us to look at how the entire definition of the public square has mutated in the last few years.
How so?
Well, Del Arroz is clearly operating under the older, traditional journalistic model, right?
Yeah.
You sit down, you ask questions, and you facilitate a conversation for the audience. The platform itself is seen as neutral.
Okay, I see.
But Williams's language indicates a completely different paradigm, one that honestly dominates the traditional publishing industry, right?
Where the platform is not neutral at all.
Right. In this modern paradigm, appearing on a platform is viewed as a literal exchange of cultural capital. By granting the interview, Williams would be lending his prestige and his brand's tacit approval to Fandom Pulse.
But doesn't that inherently destroy the whole concept of public course?
Well, yeah, that's the argument.
Because if every single conversation is viewed as an endorsement of the other person's higher worldview, then nobody can ever speak to anyone who isn't their exact ideological clone.
It creates a massive echo chamber.
It does. If an author views an interview solely as brand management, they are no longer prioritizing the...
Right, the reader who might just want to hear how they came up with a cool magic system.
Exactly. They are prioritizing their PR.
And that is precisely the tension Del Arroz is highlighting in the video. And, you know, his frustration is really compounded by the profound vagueness of the rejection.
Oh, the vagueness is key here.
It is. When Williams cites some of the things you have said and done, Del Arroz points out that Williams doesn't name a single specific offense. No, he doesn't point to a specific article or a controversial quote or any specific action. He relies entirely on this sort of amorphous, generalized cloud of reputation.
And Del Arroz makes a really sharp observation about that. He notes that Tad Williams is a legendary novelist.
Right.
He's a guy who has literally built a lucrative, decades-long career on his ability to choose precise, evocative words to construct higher...
He is a master of language.
Exactly. But suddenly, when it is time to articulate a professional boundary, all that precision just vanishes. He defaults to the most opaque corporate language possible.
And Del Arroz interprets that opacity as structural.
Evidence of what?
Well, he doesn't view it as just a polite way to spare his feeling. He views that vagueness as absolute proof that the rejection is based entirely on secondhand rumors.
Ah, the whisper networks.
Yeah, exactly. Whisper networks and cancel culture mentality. And this theory is actually bolstered by another tiny detail in the email.
Right, the mention of Williams's wife.
Yeah, Williams mentions that his wife, Deborah, who apparently helps manage these media inquiries, didn't even know Del Arroz's name before she processed the request.
Let's pause and really look at the mechanics of that, because it's fascinating.
It really is.
Del Arroz deduces that if the person managing the inbox didn't know his name, but the ultimate rejection is based on things said and done, then some secondary mechanism must have been triggered behind the scenes.
Right. Somebody, somewhere, flagged the name.
Someone whispered in an ear.
And this is how Del Arroz transitions the conversation from just setting personal boundaries to institutional gatekeeping.
Because there's a big difference between the two.
A huge difference. A boundary is when an individual says, hey, you insulted me directly, therefore I will not speak to you.
Right.
But gatekeeping, at least within the framework Del Arroz is presenting, operates through these whisper networks. The network has labeled the individual as unacceptable, and therefore access to the establishment is denied.
Completely divorced from any evaluation of their actual creative work.
Exactly.
You know, the mechanics of a whisper network in the digital age are just wild, and they really explain the speed of these.
I don't think they are so fast.
Because historically, a whisper network was analog. It was gossip at a literary convention or a cocktail party in Manhattan. It was a slow process.
Right. It took weeks or months for a rumor to travel.
But today, a whisper network is operationalized through private Slack channels,
Closed Discord servers,
shared block lists among publicists and editors. The vetting process isn't a deep dive into an author's bibliography. It is a quick query in a back.
Hey, does anyone know this guy?
Exactly. And if a name comes back flagged as culturally or politically problematic by the community consensus, the door just closes.
It operates like this invisible, decentralized credit score for social capital.
That is a perfect way to describe it, an invisible credit.
And that invisible credit score is exactly what leads Del Arroz into his broader theory regarding the ideological black.
Because while the email relied on those vague allusions to things said and done, Williams did lay out a few specific categories.
He did. He explicitly mentioned community politics and religion.
And the inclusion of that word, religion, triggers a massive analytical leap for Del Arroz.
It really does. In the video, he clearly states his identity as a Catholic.
Right.
And because the rejection cites religion as a factor without providing any specific contextual example, Del Arroz openly speculates to his audience about what that actually means.
He literally asks if this implies a systemic bias against Catholic individuals on Williams' part.
Or even within the traditional publishing apparatus as a whole.
I mean, when a rejection is predicated on a broad category rather than action, human psychology basically guarantees we are going to insert our own identity markers into that void.
Oh, absolutely. We are wired to make sense of the denial. Del Arroz hears that religion is a friction, looks at his own religious identity, and draws a straight line.
But regardless of Williams' actual intent regarding that specific word, Del Arroz uses this moment to illustrate his overarching theory of how traditional publishing operates today.
Yes, he introduces this concept of status game.
We really need to spend some time on this because it is the absolute core of his critique against the establishment.
It is the foundation of his whole argument.
Del Arroz explains that access in science fiction and fantasy used to be based on a relatively straightforward meritocracy.
Right. You wrote a good book, you got published.
The mechanical process of the industry supported it. You wrote a manuscript. You sent it to a slush pile or a literary. And if the prose was compelling and the story had a market, it was purchased.
Your ability to craft a narrative bought your ticket into the room.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
But Del Arroz argues that this foundational model has been completely subverted.
He asserts that a significant portion of the traditional publishing establishment no longer evaluates worth based on the text at all.
Really? Then what do they evaluate?
They evaluate worth based on social association. He maps out the rules of these status games very clearly for his viewers.
Okay, let's hear.
According to this theory, the primary metric of a modern traditional author is who they're willing to be seen talking.
It is the ultimate manifestation of guilt by association.
Exactly. Del Arroz states that if an established author talks to the wrong person, and he definitely categorizes himself as the wrong person in the eyes of the establishment,
right,
then that established author's own status takes a massive hit within their peer group.
So talking to the wrong guy lowers your own invisible credit score.
You got it. And conversely, if you publicly refuse to engage with the wrong person, you secure your seat at the table.
It is a mechanism of virtue by dissociation.
That's exactly what it is. By visibly and publicly denying access to someone the Whisper Network has deemed out of bounds, an author signals their own ideological purity.
They prove their loyalty to the in-group.
Right. It is basically the administrative maintenance of social capital.
But I have to challenge the sustainability of that model.
Go for it.
If an author, or an entire publishing house for that matter, is expending massive amounts of energy managing these associations, like vetting podcast hosts, checking the political affiliations of reviewers, curating their public interactions just to avoid a status, how does that not structurally alienate the actual consumer?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
I mean, the person walking into a Barnes & Noble doesn't care about an author's Slack channel reputation.
Not at all.
They just want a compelling story.
And that is the exact vulnerability that Del Arroz targets in the video. He points out the profound sterility of the status game.
Sterility, I like that word for it.
Yeah, he argues that prioritizing social purity over creative output abandons the primary function of the entire industry.
Which is to write books.
Exactly. He delivers this very sharp critique, stating that these status games produce absolutely nothing.
Right.
They do not write a single sentence. They do not evoke any emotion in a reader. They exist solely so a small, insular group can maintain authority over what is considered culturally legitimate.
It is an incredibly non-creative expenditure of energy.
It really is. He is arguing that the traditional establishment is basically operating this administrative bureaucracy of social standing, while the actual readers are out there starving for good content.
And he places a very specific historical expiration date on this behavior, too.
He does. He refers to this method of ideological gatekeeping as a 2016 or 2020 playbook.
Placing a timeline on it is such a vital piece of his argument.
Because he is framing this method of virtue signaling not just as frustrating, but as functionally obsolete.
Right. He believes the cultural zeitgeist has already moved on.
His thesis is that the modern audience has recognized the mechanics of this ideological vetting, and they've simply walked away from it.
They're tired of it.
Exactly. The era where a coordinated social media mob could completely destroy a career based on an out-of-context association is, in his view anyway, coming to an end.
Because audience fatigue has finally set in.
Right.
It is a classic misallocation of resource by an incumbent industry.
Oh, totally.
The establishment is still spending all this capital guarding the gate, checking the ideological passports of everyone trying to enter.
Meanwhile, the audience has realized the walls don't actually matter anymore.
Yeah, the audience has moved out into the wilderness to find the stories they actually want to.
And that transition from the old guarded walls to the new wilderness perfectly bridges into the next major component of the email.
Because things are about to get very...
Yes. While the references to politics and religion were vague and required Del Arroz to do some extrapolating,
Tad Williams drew one incredibly specific, completely unambiguous line in the sand regarding
the AI fault line.
Yes. Amidst all the foggy language about reputation and boundaries, Williams points to a concrete, measurable variable: the use of artificial intelligence in creative writing.
This is huge right now.
It is. Williams explicitly states in his email that Del Arroz's public stance on AI is a major contributing factor to the rejection.
He defines generative AI as a threat to all writers that my wife and I take very seriously.
This is perhaps the most tangible, high-stakes debate happening across literally all creative...
Oh, from graphic design to screenwriting pro, everybody is fighting.
And here it is, localized in a single sentence of a podcast rejection.
It's incredible. And you have to look at it from Williams' perspective. For a traditional author who has built a legacy over decades by manually wrestling with syntax and structure, vocabulary,
the emergence of a machine learning model that can instantly mimic narrative prose is an existential terror.
It threatens the economic viability and the artistic sanctity of his entire life.
But Del Arroz approaches AI from a completely different psychological and historical frame.
He really does. He represents a viewpoint that is gaining massive, massive traction in independent creator.
He refuses to frame AI as an apocalyptic threat creating.
Right. Instead, he draws a direct historical analogy. He compares generative AI to the invention of the word processor.
Which is an analogy worth breaking down mechanics pretty profound.
It is. When the word processor, and even the typewriter before it, were introduced to the literary world, they were not universally welcomed.
Oh, not at all. There was massive resistance from tradition.
Because the friction of the medium was viewed as essential to the art.
Yeah. If you go back and look at the historical reaction to the typewriter, prominent thinkers argued that it literally changed the very nature of human thought.
Didn't someone say that about Nietzsche?
Yeah. Nietzsche's friends noted that his prose became punchier, almost more mechanical, when he started using a typewriter instead of writing by hand.
That is fact.
And the argument against the word processor decades later was even louder.
Oh, I can imagine.
Traditionalists argued that the ability to effortlessly delete, cut, and paste removed the deliberate, painstaking thought required for true literature.
Because the physical effort of rewriting a page longhand forces a level of editorial scrutiny.
Exactly. And the backspace just destroyed that.
The historical establishment always views the removal of friction as the degradation of art.
It never failed.
So Del Arroz is pointing out that we have survived this exact technological panic before.
He argues that generative AI is not going to vanish for the exact same reason the keyboard did not vanish.
The utility is simply too high.
Right. He notes that millions of people are already integrating these models into their daily work.
Attempting to ban AI, from his perspective, is as futile as attempting to ban the backspace.
It is just a tool that removes a new layer of friction from the creative process.
But I have to push back on Del Arroz's analogy here just a bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because there is a massive mechanical difference between a word processor and a large language.
Sure.
A word processor does not autonomously generate plots.
Fair point.
It does not scrape billions of copyrighted words to predict the next token in a sentence. It only records what the human actively inputs.
Right. Generative AI crosses the threshold from being a passive recording tool to an active synthetic collaborator.
Exactly. Isn't Del Arroz kind of ignoring the autonomous nature of the technology by reducing it to a mere keyboard?
That is the exact counter-argument that the traditional establishment, including Williams, relies on. The machine isn't just taking dictation, it is hallucinating content. However, Del Arroz sidesteps that autonomy argument entirely in the video.
How does he do that?
Through an assertion of supreme confidence in his own human capability.
Oh, right.
He mitigates the threat of AI by projecting this absolute abundance mindset regarding his own talent.
His confidence in the video is striking.
It really is. He flatly states that he has zero fear of being replaced by generative AI because he knows unequivocally that his own prose is of a higher quality than anything an algorithm can synthesize.
He's basically telling his audience, let the machines try to write a space opera.
My sentences will always possess a human spark and structural quality that the predictive text model just cannot replicate.
And this confidence actually leads to a very sharp psychological critique of the traditional publishing.
What does he say?
Del Arroz hypothesizes that the level of fear an author harbors toward AI is inversely proportional to their confidence in their own talent.
Oh, wow. So he's saying they are scared because they know they aren't that good.
Basically, yeah. He suggests that the existential panic radiating from the establishment is actually a mass manifestation of imposter syndrome.
That is brutal.
It is. If you truly believe that a predictive algorithm trained on internet data can easily replicate your unique artistic voice, you must implicitly believe that your voice is formulaic, predictable, and devoid of genuine originality.
He is suggesting that the writers most terrified of ChatGPT are the ones who have been writing like Chat their entire...
It is a devastating critique of modern publishing output.
It really is. He implies that the industry has become so reliant on tropes and formulas that they have inadvertently trained their own replacement.
Exactly. Although he does temper this critique a bit when addressing Tad Williams directly.
Oh, right. The age comment.
Yeah. He actually notes Williams's advanced age, suggesting that an author in the twilight of an incredibly successful career shouldn't really be expending energy worrying about the macroeconomic impacts of AI anyway.
Because the timeline of AI dominance won't intersect with the remainder of his active publishing window?
Right. It's a very blunt assessment of demographics.
He essentially says, Tad, you've already won. You've built your legacy. By the time AI completely revolutionizes the industry, it won't affect your back.
And this confusion over why Williams has chosen to make AI his hill to die on leads Del Arroz to pivot again
to what he views as the actual apocalyptic threat to the industry.
And this is where the structural analysis in the video really reaches it.
Because if the fear of AI is a misdirection, what is the actual crisis?
Del Arroz shifts the focus entirely away from software and technology and places it squarely on shifting human demographics.
The attention economy.
Yes. He identifies a generational crisis of literacy.
He states that the real threat to authors isn't a machine that can write books. It is a generation of human beings who are fundamentally losing the cognitive capacity at all.
He points directly to the demographic being raised entirely on the hyper-fast, algorithmic dopamine hits of TikTok and YouTube Short.
The mechanics of the attention economy are brutal for the novel form.
They really are. A traditional fantasy novel requires sustained, uninterrupted focus for hours, sometimes days.
It requires the reader to actively participate in the mental visualization of the world.
Right, but platforms like TikTok train the brain to expect an external visual and auditory payoff every 15 seconds.
The cognitive patience required for deep reading is literally being unlearned by the upcoming demographic.
Which is terrifying for an author, but the irony here is so thick you could cut it with a knife.
Oh, the irony is amazing.
Del Arroz is delivering this passionate, highly structural argument about the dangers of short-form video algorithm destroying the attention span required for novels.
While sitting in front of a camera, broadcasting to an audience on YouTube.
Exactly. He is utilizing the exact mechanism of the cultural distraction to beg people to focus on the written word.
It is deeply ironic, but it is also a testament to his sheer pragmatism as an indicator.
Oh, he knows exactly what he's doing.
He understands the mechanics of audience capture. He knows that he cannot reach a massive audience in 2026 by handing out physical pamphlets.
Right. He has to go to where the attention is aggregated.
He is using the platform of the short attention span era as a Trojan horse to advocate for the preservation of deep, immersive storytelling.
That's a great way to look at it. And this realization leads to a moment of genuine regret in the video regarding the rejected interview.
Yeah, he seemed genuinely bummed out about it.
He points out to his audience that the overlapping demographics of his fan base and Tad Williams' fan base represent a massive missed opportunity.
Because they are both authors who specialize in writing massive, expansive science fiction and fantasy?
Right. He argues that from a strategic standpoint, traditional authors and independent authors should be forming a united front right now.
Because the existential battle isn't over ideological purity or whether you draft your manuscript using AI.
No, the existential battle is over the survival of the medium itself.
It really makes you look at the entire industry through a different lens.
It does.
If the ship is actively sinking because the water of the attention economy is rushing in, the traditional gatekeepers are basically standing on the deck checking the political affiliations of the independent authors before they allow the water.
That is the perfect analogy.
Del Arroz is saying, look, we have overlapping audiences who still actually love to. We could have used this interview to cross-pollinate those audiences.
To grow the total market share of readers.
Exactly. And encourage the next generation to put down the phone and pick up a book.
But because that collaboration was blocked by the vague things said and done and the rigid adherence to the AI fault line,
Del Arroz is forced to continue building outside the walls.
Right. And this brings us to the final and honestly most economically significant portion of his analysis.
The anatomy of the rejection reveals the absolute necessity of the bypass.
Because the traditional doors are bolted shut, guarded by whisper networks and status games, Del Arroz has aggressively constructed an entirely parallel, independent ecosystem.
And he comes to this video with the receipts to prove its viability.
He really does. He details his credentials to emphasize that under any historical merit-based metric, he has earned the right to sit at the table.
He establishes his professional standing very deliberately. He cites his status as a multi-time #1 best-selling author.
Right, and he points to a long, sustained career as a journalist.
Yes, specifically naming his tenure with the Federalist and PJ Media just to prove he knows how to conduct professional interviews.
And he notes his multiple literary awards.
He is building a mechanical argument here. He's saying, look at the data, I have the sales velocity, I have the journalistic background, I have the critical acclaim.
I have the number.
Exact. But because the traditional establishment uses the invisible metric of social capital instead of the tangible metric of sales skill, he just took his credentials and built Fandom Pulse.
And he emphasizes the sheer scale of the platform he built. He wants to make it incredibly clear to the viewer that this is not a niche, obscure blog shouting into the void.
No, the numbers he claims are massive.
He states that Fandom Pulse receives 300,000 views.
300,000, that is huge.
And he highlights a dedicated mailing list of nearly 7,000 people.
Okay, that mailing list is a crucial economic detail that we need to talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
In the modern creator economy, a direct-to-consumer mailing list of 7,000 highly engaged readers is exponentially more valuable than a massive, passive social...
Because social media platforms can just throttle your reach algorithmically, right?
Yes. They squeeze your reach, force you to buy ads. But a mailing list guarantees direct access to...
You on the list.
Exactly. When Del Arroz launches a new project, he has 7,000 guaranteed points of contact that no gatekeeper can intercept or block.
And he weaponizes this metric in the video.
He really does. He tells his audience, Tad Williams apparently thinks you, the 7,000 people on this list, are not important enough to talk to.
It is brilliant populist framing.
It is. He perfectly aligns his own rejection with the rejection of his audience.
He transforms the gatekeeping of the author into the alienation of the reader.
But the most compelling evidence he presents for the supremacy of his independent ecosystem is actually...
Yes, the books themselves.
This is where we return to that pigskin binding we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
Right. In the video, Del Arroz proudly displays his physical work, specifically a volume from his series, The Orion War.
And he details the physical construction with this intense pride.
He notes that it is bound in genuine Italian pigskin and physically manufactured in Switzerland.
Now, we need to explain why the physical construction of a book is such a vital piece of evidence in a debate about gate.
It goes back to the history of publishing.
Exact. For over a century, the traditional publishing establishment held an absolute unbreakable monopoly on premium physical media.
Let's break down the supply chain mechanics of that.
Okay. So, if you walk into a bookstore right now and buy a standard mass market paperback, you are buying a product optimized for cheap.
Right. It uses what's called perfect binding.
Yes, which basically means the pages are chopped flat and glued straight into the spine using a heat-set adhesive.
And the paper is usually highly acidic, which means it will yellow and degrade over time.
It is designed to be disposed.
Conversely, premium binding like Smith sewing, where the pages are physically sewn together in groups called signatures before being glued.
Which allows the book to lay flat and last for generations.
Exactly. That kind of printing requires massive upfront capital.
Because to utilize a premium printer in Europe, a publisher must massive minimum.
Right. Often in the tens of thousands.
And then they have to pay to ship those units across the ocean, warehouse them, and assume the financial risk of bookstores returning copies.
It's a huge logistical nightmare.
So because of that massive financial risk, traditional publishers would only invest in premium physical production for guaranteed mega.
You only got leather binding and acid-free paper if you were J.R.R. Tolkien or Stephen King or a massive breakout phenomenon.
Right. And for the last 20 years, independent authors were stigmatized by the physical quality of their print-on-demand.
The establishment could literally point to the flimsy glue and the thin paper and say, see, they aren't real authors. Real authors have high-quality books.
But Del Arroz is demonstrating that the economic script completely flipped.
Totally.
By utilizing crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, independent authors bypass the financial risk of the traditional model entirely.
They go directly to the audience with a pitch.
The audience funds the project upfront.
And with the capital secured before a single page is even printed, the independent author can go directly to the premium printers in Switzerland.
They completely bypass the gatekeeper's bank.
It is amazing. Del Arroz holds up his Italian pigskin book as undeniable proof of concept.
He is showing that independent authors are no longer just competing on the quality of their prose. They are actively outcompeting traditional publishing on the physical quality of the artifact.
He explicitly states in the video, we're just going to out-quality everybody else out there.
The traditional publisher is literally no longer a necessary mechanism to produce a masterpiece.
And this realization connects perfectly back to his analysis of the interview rejection.
How so?
Because while Williams utilized the Whisper Network to say no, Del Arroz pivots to list the monumental figures in the industry who have looked at his platform, looked at his sales, and said yes.
Oh, right. And it is a roster of absolute heavyweights.
It is.
He has interviewed Orson Scott Card, the author of Ender's Game. He has interviewed Adrian Tchaikovsky, one of the most prolific and acclaimed names in modern sci-fi.
He has spoken with Lois McMaster Bujold, a certified grandmaster of the genre.
And C.J. Cher. These are not fringe authors. These are the foundational architects.
So, looking at this entire landscape, the 300,000 views, the direct-to-consumer mailing list, the Swiss-bound leather books, and the access to literal grandmasters,
Del Arroz formulates his ultimate overarching thesis for why Tad Williams actually rejected the interview.
He concludes that the rejection has absolutely nothing to do with religion.
And it has nothing to do with artificial intelligence.
Right. He arrives at a conclusion based purely on power dynamics.
Del Arroz's ultimate thesis is that the traditional publishing establishment is paralyzingly aware of the massive relevancy of here.
They look at the crowdfunded millions. They look at the massive Substack audiences operating completely outside their editorial control.
And Del Arroz argues that the reason traditional authors vet independent creators so harshly, the reason they utilize status games to deny them access,
is because they are genuinely terrified of this shifting power dynamic.
He articulates it brilliantly in the video. He says, "An awareness is a tell. You don't vet people who don't matter."
That line is so good. He points out the inconsistency in Williams' behavior, too.
Right, because Williams frequently gives interviews to tiny, obscure YouTube
channels with barely 100 views without subjecting them to a rigorous background check.
But he vetted fandom.
Why? Because the size and influence of Fandom Pulse demands attention.
It is the ultimate paradox of the rejection. By applying the brakes and refusing to engage, the establishment is tacitly admitting the momentum of the independent creator.
Del Arroz interprets the rejection not as a defeat, but as absolute validation of his status.
The independent ecosystem has grown so large, so profitable, and so culturally resonant that the traditional gatekeepers can no longer afford to ignore it.
They are forced to actively fight it.
Wow. We have mapped an incredible amount of territory based on a few sentences.
We really have. Let's try to consolidate the mechanics of what we've uncovered here.
Okay, so we began with a simple, polite declination. I'm going to respectfully turn down your request.
And by unpacking the implications of that one sentence, we expose the massive fault lines beneath the entire
We examine how professional boundaries have morphed into ideological gate through the mechanics of digital whisper networks.
We saw how the traditional meritocracy of writing has been partially replaced by the administrative maintenance of social capital and these elaborate status games.
We explored the philosophical chasm regarding artificial intelligence, contrasting the traditionalist fear of obsolescence with the independent mindset mindset of treating generative models as just the new word.
We looked at the deeper systemic threat of demographic shifts, where both the traditional and independent spheres are fundamentally losing the war for human attention to short-form video algorithms.
And finally, we tracked the economic rise of the independent author, proving that when the traditional gates are locked, creators will simply use direct-to-consumer crowdfunding to build a superior parallel infrastructure.
So we have to bring this all back to you, the listener.
Why does this inside baseball analysis matter to your life?
It matters because these invisible battles over status, technology, and economics directly dictate the shape of our culture.
The friction we map today determines which manuscripts get,
Which authors get promoted by the algorithms.
and ultimately, which stories end up on your bedside table.
If the traditional publishing houses continue to retreat into defensive posture, prioritizing ideological purity tests over creative risk,
And the independent creators continue to build entirely separate crowd-funded forts,
the middle ground of public discourse completely.
which leaves us with a final, lingering questioner.
If the creators in our culture, the writers we rely upon to dream up our futures, to construct our shared mythology, our starships, and our magic systems,
If they continue to fracture into completely separate, ideologically and technologically isolated camps,
what happens to the reader?
if we lose the ability to have a shared cultural imagination, do we eventually lose the ability to understand each other entirely?
The X-ray of the publishing industry, right, reveals a system completely fractured by muddy waters and invisible barriers.
And until authors across all spectrums figure out how to navigate the same public square, the readers are the ones left waiting in the dark.
It is something to keep in mind the next time you pick up a beautifully bound book and wonder about the invisible, mechanical journey it took to reach your hand.
Keep questioning the narrative, keep exploring the underlying mechanics of the media you consume, and whatever you do, keep fighting for the space to read long-form stories. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.